my name is Sasha Farbach from tvpworld, and my next guest is Professor Margarita Šešelgytė from the Institute of International Relations and Political Science, Vilnius University, who joins me now. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us here.
Good morning.
So if we look at the Baltic states, a lot has happened in terms of reinforcing that NATO eastern flank. You have a German battalion now in Lithuania building up. You have the Canadians very much in that battle group. You've got in Estonia the Brits. Is this enough in your mind? Is the Baltic now secure?
I guess it's never enough. It is better than we had when we entered NATO. We didn't even have our defense plans. It went better in 2017 when enhanced forward presence battalions were deployed in 3 Baltic countries and Poland. But we have to bear in mind that the security situation has been degrading ever since. It has degraded in 2022 when Russia attacked Ukraine, but we are facing new developments both in the field in Ukraine, but also what Russia is doing inside, building up the armed forces, building up their defense industry, working in 3 shifts, and also apart from these overt measures, there are a lot of covert measures which are directed also to the Baltic countries. So we have to constantly run against the time, building our military capabilities, but not only. We have to invest in protecting our infrastructure resilience, investing in protection of critical infrastructures in particular, but also building up the societal resilience, ability to fight against the cognitive warfare that Russia is launching against the Baltic countries. So to say that it is enough, probably it's overstatement.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned they're working overtime, 3 shifts. Russians are at this for a long time. And if we look back in May as well, you had the idea that they wanted to redraw the maritime border. You have more and more incursions, removing those navigational buoys in Estonia and the Narva River. But in your mind, is the reaction by NATO, by the Allies, is it sufficient on par with all these incursions that just seem to be increasing on the Russian side?
It is very difficult to react because, you know, it's always something new and you cannot predict what's going to happen, what's going to be next. And this is this gray zone, you know, because you cannot react legally, you know. It's basically not illegal to move the sign or say that, you know, it doesn't have to be there.
But it's done without any notice.
Yeah, and it's done, of course, it's done without any notice because that's the purpose, that's the goal. And apart from these covert measures, there are a lot of other things that probably you don't see as a security, major security breach. For instance, in Lithuania, some weeks ago, we had a fire in IKEA. And at the beginning, that everyone thought that it's a normal, you know, thing which happens every day. And then at the end of the day, there were some connections with Russia. So there are all sorts of bits of things happening around. And the idea, the goal is to create chaos and to do something within this chaos, you know, to spread the smoke and try to harm the Baltic countries, but not necessarily only the Baltic countries. Just by creating chaos in the West, in the East, you are also creating the fertile ground for reducing support for Ukraine, which is key at the moment, which is essential for our security in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in chaos, this is something that the Kremlin likes to do, whether we have let's say, the actual smoking gun or not. But also I think it's made the West, in particular, the eastern flank, react. We've just had, I think, in the last days, a special security pact between Ukraine and the European Union, very historic. We also have, I think, in Lithuania, your own country, also in the last couple of weeks, another agreement, a security pact between Lithuania and Ukraine. These kind of pacts, what kind of significance do they have? Are these more guarantees of security? Do these tie in these nations more with Ukraine? And how are they perceived by Moscow in your mind?
Oh, just you know, a part of a big picture. Of course, it's a very strong political message, but first of all, for Ukraine. and that we are standing besides you and we are helping. And indeed, the countries of this region, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, and Poland have been very helpful, because it's also about our own security. We are fighting for our security by helping Ukraine. But for Moscow, it is, of course, it is important that the aid would stop, so they would do everything to shatter the unity of these countries. And they see this as a part of the big picture. It's not only about the EU, it's not about the Baltic countries and Poland, it's also about the US and other countries which are playing the role in this war, because without the support of the Western democracies, in particular the support of the military equipment, the success of Ukraine would be very doubtful in the nearest future.
I mean, Margarita, you've covered this whole region very well, security dynamics. Are you worried at all in terms of what might happen in the United States in November? Can Europe do these security issues by itself?
I would say there are two components of it. One is the component of military aid. The EU have surprised many analysts in terms of how unified it has been ever since the war started, in terms of political unity, but also on sanctions. But what was even the bigger surprise is that the European Union was supporting Ukraine with the military equipment. And this support has been growing slowly but steadily. And I would say that was that last July that the aid from the Europe has overcome the aid from the United States. So in terms of aid, yes, EU is having a potential, and it is very important that the aid from the EU would come. Can they do it alone? I think that at the moment that would be probably questionable. But there is another very important component when we are looking a bit more into the field of defense. Can the EU defend itself against Russia at the moment? And that's even more questionable. So we need the US presence in the region, whoever comes to the White House next fall.
Mm-hmm. And also, I think, speaking of the region, I think quite a major step, I think also importance now, as Kaja Kallas, Prime Minister of Estonia, will now be the High Representative, the top diplomat of the EU. I mean, how do you sense that? Because, I mean, this is a huge step, not just for Estonia, the Baltics, for the region. What do you expect from her in that role?
Yeah, you have to bear in mind that this is a very interesting position and not very independent position. If you look at the President of the European Commission and the President of the Council, they sort of they represent either institutions like President of the Commission, and it has a lot of power, or the member states where the decisions are made. So either institutions in many fields of the European Union, there are the decisions that are made by institutions, or the member states. In the field of the foreign and security policy, the major decisions are made by member states, unanimously by the decision of the governments of the member states. So sort of the position of the High Representative is not very independent. But on the other hand, if you look back at the history of these positions when they were created, I mean, majority of the representatives were from either southern countries or Lady Ashton from the UK. So giving this position to the Baltic state, which is very outspoken on the matters related to Russia and security in the region, it's a big step forward. Although probably she will not have a lot of independence. She would play some more representative role. But this fact that, you know, this choice was made and the position was given to the Baltic country, I think it's a very important step forward for the European Union, showing that, as they always say, we should have listened to the Baltic countries. So probably they start listening at the moment.
And she's been quite outspoken. I think a lot of people more will listen to her and her words.
Hope so.
It'll be really interesting. Look, always a pleasure to talk to you, Professor Margarita Šešelgytė. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. That's Sasha Farbach for TVP World. Goodbye.